Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
You know that sinking feeling that creeps into your chest the moment you hear yourself say yes? While every part of you is quietly screaming no. It's almost like your mouth betrays you before your heart gets a chance to speak. The words tumble out, "Of course I can help," or "Sure, that's fine with me." And yet, as the smile sits frozen on your face, your body feels heavy. A knot forms in your stomach, your shoulders slump just slightly, and you feel yourself shrinking a little smaller inside. We've all been there. And the truth is, those moments are not about the little favors or the extra tasks themselves. It's about the quiet betrayal of your own needs, the way you dismiss your own voice to make space for everyone else's. Think about how many times you've done this. Maybe it was when a friend asked you to watch her kids, even though you desperately needed a night to yourself. Maybe it was when your family wanted to gather for dinner on a weekend when your whole body was begging for rest. But you went anyway because saying no felt too complicated. Or maybe it was when a coworker asked if you could stay late to finish something, and even though you had already worked yourself to the bone, you said yes because you didn't want to be seen as difficult or unhelpful. These moments pile up. One small yes against your will doesn't seem like much, but over time they stack like bricks on your back until one day you realize you are carrying a weight you were never meant to bear. It feels like such a contradiction, doesn't it? We want to be kind, we want to be generous. We want to be the person others can count on. And yet, somewhere along the way, we start confusing kindness with self-erasure. We think saying no is unkind. We think protecting our energy is selfish. We think standing firm in our own needs means we are pushing people away. But let me ask you this. Why do we believe that everyone else's needs are valid and ours are negotiable? Why do we imagine that caring for ourselves somehow diminishes our worth, while pouring ourselves out to exhaustion makes us lovable? These are the quiet lies many of us were raised with, especially as women. We grew up being told to be polite, to be agreeable, to not make waves. We learned to keep the peace even if it meant keeping silent. We learned that good women, nice women, worthy women are the ones who always say yes. And so we became experts at it. Experts at smiling while swallowing our truth. Experts at showing up for everyone while quietly abandoning ourselves. And if you've ever noticed how exhausted, resentful, or even invisible you sometimes feel, it's not because you are weak. It's because you've been carrying a script that was handed to you long before you had the chance to write your own. But here's the thing, something deep inside you already knows this isn't sustainable. There's a part of you, maybe a quiet whisper, that says, "I can't keep living like this." That whisper gets louder every time you go home, drained after agreeing to something you didn't want to do. It grows stronger every time you smile through gritted teeth while someone steps over your limit. And it shows up in the tears that come when you finally close the door at night and think, "Why do I always end up last on my own list?" That whisper is not weakness. It's not selfishness. It's your soul begging for boundaries. And I want to pause here and tell you something important. If you've struggled with this, if setting boundaries feels like climbing a mountain barefoot, you are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. The difficulty is not proof of your failure, it's proof of your humanity. Boundaries feel hard because most of us were never taught how to set them. Think about that. We were taught how to say please and thank you. We were taught how to share. We were taught how to sacrifice for others. But how many of us were taught how to say no without guilt? How many of us were taught that protecting our energy is just as important as giving it? Very few. So of course it feels foreign. Of course it feels uncomfortable. But let's imagine something different for a moment. Picture yourself waking up one morning and realizing that you don't have to spend your day performing for everyone else. You don't have to agree out of obligation. You don't have to explain yourself endlessly. Imagine walking into a conversation and trusting your own voice enough to simply say, "That doesn't work for me." Imagine the relief of knowing that your worth is not tied to how much you sacrifice, but to the fact that you exist, whole and enough, as you are. Imagine the power of saying yes, only when you truly mean it, because when you do, people can finally trust that your yes is genuine. That's the freedom boundaries offer us. Not the freedom to push people away, not the freedom to isolate ourselves, but the freedom to show up in relationships authentically without resentment lurking under the surface. Boundaries don't destroy connection. They preserve it. They are the invisible lines that say, "This is where I end and you begin. This is how we can love each other without losing ourselves." And I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, "That sounds wonderful, but it doesn't feel possible for me." Maybe you've tried before and felt guilty for days afterward. Maybe you've had someone react poorly when you tried to speak up, and it made you retreat back into silence. Maybe you've convinced yourself it's just easier to keep saying yes. But let me remind you, every skill feels awkward at first. You didn't know how to drive a car the first time you sat behind the wheel. You didn't know how to use a computer the first time you touched a keyboard. You didn't know how to stand up for yourself until the moment you finally did it. Boundaries are no different. They feel shaky at first, but over time, they become natural, almost second nature. So let's go back to that sinking feeling we started with. The one that shows up when you betray yourself with a false yes. That moment isn't the end of your story. It's a signal. It's your body's way of saying, "Pay attention. You don't have to live like this anymore." And if you're listening to me right now, maybe this is your invitation. Maybe this is the moment you finally say, "I'm ready to try something different." Maybe this is where you stop treating your needs as an afterthought and start honoring them as sacred. Because here's the truth I want you to carry with you: boundaries are not about being selfish, unkind, or difficult. They are about choosing freedom over resentment. They are about choosing authenticity over performance. They are about choosing yourself, not at the expense of others, but in alignment with them. And when you do that, not only do you protect your own peace, you invite others to meet you in a space of honesty and respect. And that, my friend, is the beginning of a different kind of life. Here's the truth most of us carry, but rarely say out loud: the hardest part about boundaries isn't knowing that we need them. It's believing we are allowed to have them. That's the root of the struggle. Deep down, you already know when you're stretching yourself too thin. You already feel the exhaustion when you say yes while wishing you could say no. You already hear that inner voice whispering that something isn't right. The problem is not lack of awareness. The problem is permission, giving ourselves the permission to choose differently. For so many women, especially in the middle chapters of life, the weight of expectation has been drilled in so deeply that boundaries feel almost unnatural. We carry years, even decades, of training that told us to be the dependable one, the flexible one, the accommodating one. So when it comes time to stand up for our own needs, it feels like we are breaking a sacred rule. The common misunderstanding is that boundaries are cold, harsh, or selfish. That idea runs so deep that even the thought of setting one can make our stomachs twist with guilt. How many times have you rehearsed the word "no" in your head, only to soften it when it came out? "I'd love to, but I can't. Maybe next time. I'm sorry, but I don't think I can manage that." Even when we say no, we often coat it with sugar, padding it with apologies and explanations so the other person won't feel uncomfortable. What does that tell us? That we believe other people's comfort is more important than our truth. And that is the very pattern that leaves so many of us drained and resentful. Let's pause for a moment and really name the pain here. It hurts to constantly feel like you're the one carrying everyone else's load. It hurts to be the reliable one who people know they can lean on, while secretly wishing someone would lean back toward you. It hurts to smile when you're dying inside. And yet, the fear of disappointing others, the fear of being misunderstood or worse, rejected, keeps us repeating the same cycle. We silence ourselves because the cost of speaking up feels greater than the cost of staying quiet. But staying quiet comes at a cost too. That cost is your peace, your energy, your joy. Think about the times you've agreed to something you didn't want to do. Maybe you went to that dinner, ran that errand, took on that extra task. On the outside, you showed up, but inside, you were drained before you even started. And then, after it was over, did you notice the simmer of frustration? Did you notice how easy it was to get irritated with the very people you were trying to please? That's the hidden cycle. We say yes to avoid conflict, but the resentment doesn't disappear. It grows quietly until it spills over in ways we can't control. Snapping at a loved one, feeling bitter toward a friend, or shutting down emotionally. The irony is that in trying to keep relationships smooth, we often create more tension than if we had simply been honest in the first place. This problem is so common because many of us were taught that our value lies in how much we can give, not in who we are. We were praised for being helpful, admired for being dependable, celebrated for being the ones who held everything together. And of course, those are beautiful qualities. But when your worth becomes tied to self-sacrifice, it's easy to lose sight of where you end and others begin. You start believing that love must be earned through constant giving, that you're only lovable if you're useful. And that belief is exhausting. It keeps you on a treadmill that never stops, running and running, hoping that maybe if you give just a little more, you'll finally feel appreciated, finally feel enough. But that moment rarely comes. I want to say something that might feel uncomfortable at first. Resentment is not a sign that you are ungrateful or mean-spirited. Resentment is a signal. It's your body and your soul waving a red flag saying, a boundary has been crossed. Too often we dismiss that feeling, telling ourselves we should just push through, that it's not a big deal, that we should be stronger. But ignoring resentment doesn't make it go away. It's like ignoring a check engine light in your car. You can keep driving for a while, but eventually the engine will give out. And when you think about it that way, you begin to see resentment not as a flaw, but as an invitation. An invitation to pause, to listen, and to consider what boundary needs to be honored. For many women, the hardest part is not even saying no to others. It's saying yes to themselves. It's believing that their needs are as valid as anyone else's. That taking time to rest is not laziness. That declining an invitation is not rejection. That protecting their peace is not cruelty. It takes a radical shift in perspective to believe that you are worthy of care, worthy of space, worthy of respect without having to earn it by overextending yourself. And yet, that is the shift that changes everything. So why is it so hard? Because the fear of what others will think is powerful. The fear of being seen as selfish or unkind or difficult can feel unbearable. We've built identities around being the one who makes things easier for others. And change always threatens that identity. You may even hear voices from your past, parents, teachers, partners, saying things like, "Don't be so stubborn," or "You're too sensitive," or "Why can't you just go along with it?" Those words stay with us. They echo every time we try to stand firm. But just because they're familiar doesn't mean they're true. And here's where I want to validate you. If this feels hard, it's because it is hard. It's hard to unlearn decades of conditioning. It's hard to step out of a role you've played for so long. It's hard to risk disappointing people when your whole identity has been built on pleasing them. You're not weak for struggling. You're not failing because it feels uncomfortable. You are human. And being human means that growth will always feel messy before it feels liberating. The problem we face isn't that we don't know how to care for others. We've mastered that. The problem is that we've forgotten how to care for ourselves with the same tenderness. We've been taught that saying yes is loving, but what if sometimes love looks like no? What if love looks like rest, like space, like choosing presence over performance? What if the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for the people around you, is to stop pouring from an empty cup? So let's be honest. The problem is not that you are incapable of setting boundaries. The problem is that the stories you've been told about what it means to be a good woman, a good friend, a good partner, a good mother, a good daughter, those stories are outdated. They serve someone else's comfort, but they do not serve your wholeness. And now, standing here in this moment of your life, you are being invited to tell a new story. A story where your needs matter. A story where your no is just as holy as your yes. A story where you no longer disappear just to make everyone else feel seen. Here's a truth that often surprises people. Boundaries are not walls meant to shut others out. They are bridges meant to create connection while protecting your own soul. When most of us think about setting boundaries, Our first reaction is fear. We fear rejection. We fear conflict. We fear that saying no will somehow make us unlovable. But the real paradox is that boundaries don't push people away. They teach people how to engage with us authentically. They are not about exclusion, they are about clarity. And clarity, as it turns out, is the greatest gift you can give to any relationship. I want you to imagine for a moment that your life is a garden. Each relationship, each commitment, each demand on your time and energy is like a plant in that garden. Some plants are beautiful and nourishing. Some are weeds that choke the life out of everything else. When you don't set boundaries, it's as if you let the weeds grow unchecked, letting them take up all the sunlight and space until the garden that should be vibrant and alive is overrun and struggling. Boundaries are the gardener's tools. They are the pruning shears and the fence posts that protect what matters most. And yet, most of us hesitate to use them because we fear hurting someone's feelings, or being judged, or causing a stir. We fear the temporary discomfort more than the long-term depletion. Let me tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. A woman I know spent years being the person everyone relied on for emotional support. She was the one who dropped everything to comfort a friend, the one who answered midnight calls without question, the one who felt guilty if she ever considered putting herself first. One night, after yet another long day of tending to everyone else's needs, she sat alone in her living room, exhausted, feeling invisible. She realized she could not continue this way without losing herself. The next day, she decided to set a small boundary. She told a close friend that she couldn't be available at all hours, that she needed space to rest and recharge. Her first thought was terror. What if this friend got angry? What if they stopped talking to her? What if she was abandoned for the first time in her life? But then she spoke the words anyway, and the result was astonishing. Her friend said, "I didn't know that was hard for you. Thank you for telling me." The relationship did not crumble. In fact, it deepened. Her honesty invited respect and understanding. Her boundary created space for a healthier, more authentic connection. That story holds a counterintuitive truth that many of us overlook. Boundaries are not signs of selfishness or weakness. They are signals of strength and self-respect. The fear we feel before setting a boundary is not a message that we are wrong. It is simply our conditioning resisting change. Our minds have been trained to equate saying no with being unkind, to equate putting ourselves first with being selfish, to equate asserting our needs with rejection. And yet, the research and countless real-life examples show the opposite. People respect boundaries because they create predictability. They create honesty. They create trust. When you tell someone what you can and cannot do, you are not rejecting them. You are showing them how to love you without causing harm, without overstepping, without creating resentment. I want to pause here and ask you to consider your own life. How many relationships, responsibilities, or interactions have left you drained, resentful, or quietly angry? How many times have you overextended yourself, believing it was necessary to maintain connection or approval? The surprising truth is that most of the time, those negative feelings emerge not because you are too strict or too rigid, but because you have been too flexible with your own boundaries. The discomfort you feel is your soul asking for clarity, asking for protection, asking for honesty. The insight here is simple, but profound. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They are about letting people in the right way. Think about the people you love the most. Would you prefer to have them around when you are resentful and depleted, or would you rather be present, fully engaged, and joyful? Boundaries allow that. They give you the energy, the presence, and the authenticity to connect deeply without losing yourself. They are the quiet secret to relationships that are sustainable and nourishing. Sometimes the challenge is that boundaries feel unnatural at first. They feel awkward. They feel uncomfortable. You might say them and immediately regret them, or feel guilty or worry that you've gone too far. That's normal. It takes practice to unlearn the habit of people-pleasing. It takes courage to choose clarity over convenience. It takes self-compassion to accept that discomfort is part of growth. The first few times you assert a boundary, it might feel like a small battle. But each time you do it, you gain a little more strength, a little more clarity, a little more trust in your own judgment. And gradually, What once felt unnatural begins to feel liberating. Let's return to the idea of the garden for a moment. Imagine pruning the weeds carefully, thoughtfully, and intentionally. You are not attacking your plants. You are not rejecting life. You are simply creating space for what matters most to flourish. Every time you set a boundary, you are creating sunlight for your joy, water for your peace, and soil for your energy to grow. It might feel uncomfortable to remove the weeds at first because they are so familiar. You may feel guilty, or second-guess yourself, or worry that you are being unkind. But as the garden fills with light and life, you realize that this discomfort was temporary, and the nourishment is lasting. Another important insight is that boundaries are not one size fits all. They are personal, intimate, and tailored to your life, your values, and your energy. A boundary that feels simple to you may feel radical to someone else. A boundary that seems small may feel enormous at first. But every boundary is an opportunity to honor yourself and teach others how to honor you in return. The more you practice, the clearer your sense of self becomes, and the more effortless it is to maintain healthy, fulfilling relationships. Ultimately, the real insight here is this: boundaries are an act of love, both for yourself and for others. They are not punishment. They are not manipulation. They are the blueprint for relationships that are honest, sustainable, and nourishing. When you set a boundary, you are saying, I matter, my energy matters, my peace matters, and if you want to be in my life, this is how we can do it in a way that respects both of us. That is not selfishness. That is courage. That is wisdom. That is strength. And the moment you embrace this truth, everything shifts. Boundaries feel hard not because they are wrong or unkind, but because they challenge decades of conditioning and require vulnerability. They require standing in your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. They require trusting that people can handle your honesty. And the moment you begin to do it, something remarkable happens. The people who are meant to be in your life rise to meet your clarity. The relationships that were draining begin to fade, not as punishment, but as natural alignment. And your energy, once scattered and exhausted, begins to flow toward what truly matters. Boundaries are not walls, they are bridges. They are the quiet, powerful invitation to connect authentically, to show up fully, and to protect the life force that allows you to love and thrive. And once you understand that, once you truly believe it in your bones, the fear begins to soften. The guilt begins to ease. The hesitation fades. And you realize that setting a boundary is not a threat to love. It is an act of love itself. The challenge of boundaries is not only understanding why they matter, but also knowing how to put them into practice in a way that feels real and doable. Setting boundaries can feel overwhelming, especially when your entire life has been conditioned around pleasing others first. But the truth is, it doesn't have to be complicated. Boundaries are not about writing a list of rules or creating walls. They are about small, intentional actions that protect your energy, preserve your peace, and honor your needs. The first step in making boundaries practical is to begin noticing where your energy is being drained. This requires a certain honesty with yourself, a willingness to look at your life and identify where resentment, fatigue, or discomfort is quietly accumulating. Pay attention to the situations that leave you dreading the next interaction, the commitments you take on out of obligation rather than desire, and the conversations that make you feel anxious or obligated to justify yourself. These are the places where boundaries are not just helpful. They are necessary. Once you have identified these areas, the next step is to practice small, simple statements. It's easy to overcomplicate boundaries because we think they need to be long, detailed, or perfectly worded. The reality is that the simplest phrases are often the most effective. Saying, I can't take this on right now, or that doesn't work for me, or even a plain, no, thank you, can be enough to establish clarity without feeling aggressive or harsh. The key is to speak them with confidence, without over-explaining, apologizing excessively, or adding qualifiers that dilute your message. When you are consistent with these small statements, you begin to communicate that your needs matter and that clarity is not negotiable. At first, this may feel awkward. You may feel guilt, anxiety, or even fear that people will react negatively. That is normal. Your body and mind have been trained to prioritize others' comfort over your own. But discomfort does not mean you are wrong. Discomfort is simply part of growth. An important aspect of boundary setting is anticipating resistance, both from yourself and from others. You may notice a voice in your head that says, "They will be upset," or "I'm being selfish," or "Maybe I should just go along with it." Recognize these thoughts as echoes of conditioning, not truths. The fear that accompanies boundary setting is often a sign that you are moving in the right direction, stepping into your own strength, and learning to prioritize yourself without guilt. Similarly, some people in your life may react poorly at first. They may test the limits, express surprise, or even argue. This is not a sign that you have failed. It is simply their response to a new version of you. When you maintain your boundaries calmly and consistently, you are teaching them how to respect your space and energy. Over time, the people who are meant to be in your life adjust, and those who are not simply fall away naturally. Another practical step is to create routines that reinforce your boundaries. For example, if you have noticed that answering messages late at night drains you, establish a clear-cut off time for responding to calls or texts. If certain social invitations consistently leave you overextended, decide in advance which events you will attend and which you will politely decline. By planning and structuring your interactions in a way that protects your energy, you reduce the stress of on-the-spot decision-making and make it easier to enforce your boundaries without guilt. Small, repeated actions build a habit that strengthens over time until protecting your energy becomes second nature rather than a constant struggle. Equally important is learning to differentiate between reasonable requests and those that compromise your well-being. Not every yes is a violation, and not every no is selfish. Boundaries are about discernment. They are about asking yourself, does this serve my well-being? Does this honor my energy? Does this align with my values? When the answer is no, you have permission to say so. When the answer is yes, you can give fully and without resentment. This balance is what transforms boundary setting from an exercise in defense to a tool for authentic connection and peace. Communication is another key component. Boundaries work best when they are clearly expressed and communicated with honesty and respect. Avoid vague hints or expecting others to read your mind. State your needs directly, calmly, and without apology. For example, instead of saying, "I'm not sure if I can manage that," you might say, "I am unavailable to help with that right now, but I can support you in another way later." By being clear, you reduce confusion, prevent overcommitment, and give people the chance to respond respectfully. Clear communication also reduces internal anxiety. You are no longer second-guessing yourself or wondering if you should have said no differently. You have spoken your truth, and that is enough. A critical part of setting boundaries is self-compassion. Many women struggle with boundaries because they feel guilty for putting themselves first. It is easy to believe that your needs are less important than others. But the reality is that you cannot pour from an empty cup. Protecting your energy, taking space, and prioritizing rest are not selfish. They are essential. Give yourself permission to feel the discomfort, and remind yourself that caring for yourself allows you to show up more fully in every area of your life. Self-compassion also means forgiving yourself when you slip, when you overextend, or when you say yes out of habit. Each attempt is practice, each effort is progress, and every small boundary you enforce strengthens your confidence and clarity. Consistency is vital. Boundaries only work when they are maintained over time. If you say no once and then give in the next time, the message becomes muddled. People need to learn through repetition what is and is not acceptable, and you need to reinforce your own limits. Consistency also reinforces your self-trust. Each time you honor a boundary, you show yourself that your voice matters, that your needs are valid, and that your peace is non-negotiable. Over time, this consistency transforms not just your relationships, but your relationship with yourself. You begin to experience life with greater clarity, energy, and authenticity. Finally, remember that boundaries are not static, they evolve with you. As your life changes, your energy fluctuates, and your needs shift, your boundaries can and should adapt. What feels manageable today may feel overwhelming tomorrow, and vice versa. Give yourself permission to reassess and adjust. Boundaries are not a one-time achievement, they are a living practice. Each day, each interaction, Each decision is an opportunity to strengthen your ability to honor yourself while engaging authentically with the world around you. The solution to boundary struggles is not perfection. It is practice, patience, and persistence. It is noticing where your energy is being compromised, speaking your truth clearly, expecting discomfort, and reinforcing your limits consistently. It is giving yourself permission to prioritize your own well-being without guilt, and trusting that the right people will respect your clarity. Over time, this practice becomes natural, intuitive, and profoundly liberating. When you embrace boundaries as tools of self-respect and connection rather than as burdens or punishments, your life shifts. You feel lighter, freer, and more aligned with your authentic self. Relationships become healthier, more honest, and more fulfilling. You finally experience the peace and energy that were always meant to be yours, and you realize that the strength to say no is also the strength to fully say yes to what truly matters. Imagine for a moment waking up one morning and feeling a lightness you haven't experienced in years. Your chest isn't tight with obligation. Your shoulders aren't weighed down by invisible burdens. Instead of reaching for your phone with dread or scrolling through messages with anxiety, you take a deep breath and notice the stillness. That stillness is not emptiness, it is freedom. It is the energy of living according to your own truth. This is what life feels like after boundaries are established. Not the rigid, isolating, or cold kind, but the kind that honors your needs while allowing you to love and connect authentically. The shift may feel subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like the first soft light of dawn after a long night. But over time, the difference is profound. With healthy boundaries in place, your days become lighter, not because responsibilities disappear, but because you no longer carry the weight of everyone else's demands on your own shoulders. You no longer feel compelled to over-explain, over-apologize, or over-give in order to prove your worth. Your energy is no longer scattered, wasted on people or tasks that drain you unnecessarily. Instead, your time and attention flow toward what truly matters. Projects that ignite your passion, relationships that nourish your heart, activities that bring joy and fulfillment. Boundaries create space for clarity, focus, and presence, allowing you to live with intention rather than react to every request or expectation that comes your way. Picture the way you interact with people in this new life. When someone asks for your time or energy, you respond with calm confidence. You say yes when it aligns with your priorities and capacity, and you say no when it doesn't, without guilt, without fear, and without over-explanation. People respect your clarity because it communicates honesty and trustworthiness. You are no longer a source of silent resentment or exhaustion in your relationships. Instead, you are present, fully engaged, and genuinely available. The connections you maintain become deeper, richer, and more authentic because they are no longer built on convenience or obligation. They are built on respect, understanding, and mutual care. The transformation also extends to how you see yourself. You begin to recognize that your worth is not tied to how much you do for others, but to who you are at your core. You begin to appreciate your needs, your limits, and your energy as sacred, not negotiable. Every boundary you honor is a declaration: I matter. My peace matters. My energy matters. And as you repeat this declaration, you internalize it, and it becomes a guiding truth in your life. You begin to trust yourself more deeply, to listen to your intuition, and to make choices that align with your authentic desires rather than conditioned expectations. Freedom is not just about saying no to others. It is also about saying yes to yourself. Saying yes to rest when you are tired, yes to joy when it is available, yes to dreams that once felt impossible. Saying yes to boundaries allows you to reclaim the energy and focus that have been scattered or consumed by people, pleasing, guilt, or overcommitment. You discover the power of presence, being fully in the moment with the people, tasks, and experiences that matter most, without distraction, without resentment, without the constant internal dialogue of compromise. This is the essence of self-respect, honoring your life in a way that allows you to live fully, freely, and with intention. And yet, transformation is rarely instantaneous. There may still be moments of discomfort, moments of fear, moments when you question whether you are doing the right thing. Perhaps someone reacts poorly to your boundaries, or you catch yourself slipping back into old habits. This is normal. Growth is rarely linear and transformation is rarely easy. But each time you practice your boundaries, each time you speak your truth, each time you honor your energy, you reinforce a new pattern. Over time, that pattern becomes instinctive. You no longer have to debate every decision or feel anxiety before asserting your needs. Your boundaries become an integral part of who you are, a reflection of your self-respect, clarity, and courage. The emotional benefits are equally profound. You begin to feel lighter, calmer, and more grounded. Anxiety diminishes because you no longer live in a constant state of compromise or self-erasure. Resentment fades because your energy is no longer being siphoned by obligations you never agreed to. Joy becomes more accessible because you are present for the moments that matter, rather than exhausted from carrying everyone else's burdens. Relationships flourish because you are authentic, and others are invited to show up authentically as well. This is the ripple effect of transformation. The clarity and energy you cultivate within yourself extend outward, creating a life that feels intentional, fulfilling, and aligned with your values. Imagine your daily life now. You wake up knowing that you are in control of your time and energy. You leave meetings or social events when they no longer serve you, not out of guilt or fear, but out of respect for your own needs. You prioritize sleep, nutrition, self-care, and mental space, not as indulgences, but as essential acts of preservation and love. You no longer feel compelled to explain yourself at every turn. Your no is understood without apology, and your yes is meaningful because it is chosen, not defaulted. This level of presence and intentionality transforms even mundane routines into moments of empowerment. Transformation is also about reclaiming joy and creativity. When your energy is protected and your peace is honored, you begin to notice ideas, passions, and inspirations that were buried under exhaustion and obligation. You may discover hobbies you abandoned, dreams you postponed, or ambitions you thought were impossible. You can explore these areas with focus, commitment, and enthusiasm because you are no longer depleted. Boundaries create the space for life to expand, for creativity to flourish, and for experiences to feel rich and meaningful. Finally, transformation is about self-compassion and self-trust. By honoring your boundaries, you affirm your own value and demonstrate to yourself that your needs matter. You stop second-guessing yourself, stop apologizing for existing, and start living in alignment with your truth. Each choice to protect your energy reinforces your confidence, self-worth, and ability to navigate life with authenticity. You no longer chase approval or validation from others because you recognize that your life is your responsibility and your peace is non-negotiable. Picture the long-term effect. Years from now, you look back and realize that the decisions you made to honor yourself were not selfish. They were transformative. You raised your voice, prioritized your energy, and stood firm in your truth. And because of that, your life is richer, your relationships are deeper, your joy is more abundant, and your peace is unwavering. You are free to live fully, love authentically, and embrace each day with clarity and purpose. Boundaries, once intimidating and uncomfortable, have become the bridge to a life of freedom, fulfillment, and self-respect. They are no longer a challenge, they are your liberation.